Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about design, id versus ego, and how that is and affects the creative process. In Sigmund Freud's structural model of the psyche, he coined the terms id, ego, and superego. And after a deep interrogation with self, I discovered that this is how I design and approach design on a daily basis. However, this is also true of how I have led my life. I am a designer. I enjoy and engage with it daily, be it in the appreciation of a room, the pattern of a dress, or the choice of tableware at a restaurant. My design journey started in the 80s. The photo you see on the slide is of my mother, myself, and my younger brother. We had spent this summer in Italy, and we had visited Pisa and Florence. This was the summer I turned 5, and I vividly recall how curious I was with everything. The buildings, the frescoes, the nude statue of David, and how no one remarked at his state of undress. What one should always note about children, especially during these formative years, is that they are driven by their instincts. This is their first response and call to action. When uncomfortable, it will be mentioned. When something is awe-inspiring, it will be imprinted in their mind's eye. As the splendor of Italy was imprinted in me, and thus began my obsession with cities, buildings, art, and music. Of note is that our family was residing in the UK, so my look of distaste and discomfort is indicative of how hot I was and how hungry I was. And I was bugging my mother, begging her to find a place to sit and get a bite to eat. Because we're based in the UK, I had never experienced a summer like this. And of note is I am Tanzanian by origin. And our family's nomadic lifestyle also fueled my curiosity and obsession with travel, cities, cultures, art, and design. And this had a huge impact in me going forward. Which brings me to id. Id is that which you intrinsically have. It is uncorrupted. It is the designer's instinct you have that makes you know without a doubt that your work is good. It is the confidence you have in your intrinsic ability, however primitive it may be. However, with time and influence, be it through your peers championing hip hop versus your love for a classical aria, your art classes releasing a newfound love for the Cubist movement versus the Romantic period, these external influences all affect your id. Now, this happened to me in the 90s. My parents wanted to move back to the African continent, and we found ourselves in Kenya. My high school years were in Kenya, and I was needing to assimilate to a different culture and learn my second language, Swahili. And I will have you know that that also had a huge impact on how I viewed the world. For example, an East African homestead or market or city in the 90s had a very different energy, design, and utility to its European counterparts. My experience of the continent was quite isolated, however. My curiosity never waned and kept me up to breast with the challenges in South Africa and Angola. What was quite apparent was that in Africa, everything is hands-on and approached from a human scale. Experience and comfort were imperative in interactions with your fellow man. And this is where my ego came to play. The external influences presented my reality, the reality that no matter big and audacious dream I had or goal I had envisioned, if it cannot be made or realized, what is the point? If your client needs a certain religious comfort or requirement for their home to be functional to them, it does not matter whether your design is screaming for it to be heard. Realistically, you need to achieve the client's needs within your design. These external factors come to play during the design process, and a battle between your id and ego to produce a design versus your client's id and ego and the interactions henceforth. I then find myself in the early 2000s in Southern Africa at the University of Pretoria's architecture department. And I might have taken this photo, I think, in 2004. I had to learn another language, Afrikaans. And what I will say about the magic of our industry is that where language fails, drawings and sketches prevail, a skill I was taught in university and I have carried with me since. With the advent of computer-aided design, we transitioned to a digital form of design expression. And Revit, I must say, is one of my personal favorites. The University of Pretoria has a Bauhausian methodology ingrained in their way of teaching, which really calls upon you, the young designer, to always be aware of how things are built, made, constructed, even as one's design id runs wild. What is the purpose of your id? Now, the superego, however, is what makes you feel guilty for not producing that which satisfies your id and ego. Your superego is critical, conscientious, and a perfect ideal. For example, a client might want a kitchen in a specific part of the room, of their house. And as a designer, you explain to them how this is not the optimum space or the optimum position for their kitchen. But they keep on demanding that they want it in that particular location in their house. You as a designer then have to compromise and still produce the best you can do in these circumstances, however an impossible task it may deem. A design compromise, and hence a designer's id versus ego battle, results in a compromise that satisfies the client's superego. Your client always needs to be satisfied. You can't always enforce your design ideas. So how do we go about this balance? Is it hard? Yes, it is hard. So why don't we talk about this as designers? We sit in this discomfort. We develop depression. And this then results in us either quitting our practices to go teach, or quitting teaching the young and molding the young minds to go practice by ourselves. The iceberg metaphor illustrates the relationship between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. It also illustrates the relationship between these three psyches that Freud mentioned, be it the ego, the superego, and the id. What this iceberg metaphor clearly illustrates is that our id resides in our unconscious mind, in our subconscious, and it rarely comes to the surface. Whereas that which governs our conscious mind is our ego with a balance from the superego. My challenge to you as designers is to tap into the unconscious, your id, to truly dig deep. For no two designers are the same, because none of our ids are identical. And what would result is that if we all tapped into that innate part of ourselves, our id, our uniqueness will come forth, our singularity and our creativity as designers. There is no way we can all produce the same type of designs, but we do, because the superego that straddles the two, in the form of your clients, your boss, opinions, self-criticism, guilt, your self-esteem taking a knock over the years, sometimes rules. And my hope for you is that you tap more into your subconscious. We were approached by an amazing corporation. They are an insurance company. And what was really unique and what we really loved about this company was that they prioritized their employees' needs. They fully believe that in order to have a healthy work environment, they truly need to listen to their employees in order to maximize and bring out the best in them. In this instance, the client approached us and said that their employees need a social space. Now, what one needs to understand contextually is that the building is located in quite a busy area in Johannesburg. It is full of buildings. There isn't a field for as far as the eye can see. And the building occupies the 6th, 7th, and 8th floor. But they did have a rooftop. And so we presented a design with almost a childlike eye. We tapped into our id and said, look, let's be as playful as possible. Let's stretch this idea. We've been given a magical opportunity to really tap into our id. And we produced this proposal. What was lovely is that the client really loved this, and their employees really enjoyed this design as well. And it is currently in stage 2 of documentation. On the other end, you have the individual client experience, where we as designers end up either being a referee, a diplomat, a therapist managing the client's needs and taste versus your own design brand. And you sit there and ask yourself, why was I hired? I mean, in this digital age where information is at our fingertips, be it through Instagram, Pinterest boards, you ask yourself, why did this particular individual client come and seek me out? What makes you unique? So in this engagement of these 3 psyches and how you would clearly see them in how you approach various clients, the cyclical process of design and us as designers trusting this process, is what gives us the freedom to tap into these different parts of our psyche. From concept to design development, and maybe you go back to concept. During design development, you present your ideas to your clients, and then you go back to documentation. And maybe during documentation, you go back to design development. And after documentation, you then end up at realization, the construction process, and you then have your end product. You present your concept. This is a kitchen design we did for an individual client. We used Revit. The client had a leaning towards a more contemporary aesthetic. We then went through to design development, where we used 3D render technology and applied the finishes that we had presented to the client for approval and came up with this final palette. And that was what was used to realize this 3D. We then went through the task of documenting this for construction, and this was presented to the architect, and this was also presented to the shop fitters that were going to do the fit out. And I quite like this process because then I get to meet a lot of suppliers of different products and kind of play around with different materials to see how I can optimally do the best design for this client. But then reality hit. A lack of funds. And boy, oh boy, haven't we learned something these past 6 months, especially in the context we're living now where COVID-19 came and if not swept us off our feet in kind of an inspiring way to tap into our id to and kind of get into survival mode, but most of our companies have fallen apart. Most companies have retrenched, and that is a reality. Most clients have backtracked. But then does that mean you are no longer a designer because you don't see your name in shining lights on the top of a building? Is the fact that a building is not built or a room is not designed or a specific material of yours is not specified negate the title designer, architect, or supplier? I would like to say it's okay. It is not the end of the world. We literally just move on from project to project. We keep at it. And this is where the ego comes into play, where you have to be okay to go, I'm going to park this project for now. My ego is bruised. I won't get to see my name on a building or on a placard. But that does not, again, and I can stress it, negate the fact that you are an amazing designer and that you trusted the design process in order to come up and realize a beautiful design. I follow this blogger called Coffee with an Architect, and he does these he has this quite unique way of taking our designers' lives and reducing it to a pie chart. And I quite liked these two pie charts, illustrating that during the design process, as a designer, we only get to play with our id for maybe 2% of the time. And the rest of the time, we're busy doing schedules, finishes schedules, spec sheets, door schedules. And even in comparison to the project cost, our fee is just a percentage of that. And the rest of it goes to utilities, to construction, to finishes in order to realize a project. What clients and what the outside world might deem as 2% is actually a lifetime of influences during our formative years, sleepless nights during university, deep exploration of our id. And this realization, however dire as it may seem, is okay. It is, again, not the end of the world. In 2018, I jumped out of the plane and I felt free. During that plummet, I felt the most free I ever have. And the last time I've had that feeling was when I was a child. And I wondered how I forgot or lost this feeling, for this is the essence of who I am as a designer. And I don't want to have to jump out of a plane or have to do some kind of adrenaline rushed experience in order to feel this feeling, to have this thrill. My challenge to you is to not let go of that childlike notion to trust yourself that you are good at what you do and you are here for a reason, and that we need to punt ourselves as designers, of course, within the constraints of building regulations and law. May we and our designs always be unique. I have a quote on this sheet by Chris Anderson, and I won't read through it. However, the essence of it is this: we all have different ideas, designs, aspirations, and each of them are equally as important. Thank you.